Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. and I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. And today's video topic is going to be all about my personal take on the pros and cons of being a vendor. So if you're not exactly sure what I mean by being a vendor just means that you have a product-based business, and it's essentially just it's also called a pop-up if you've heard of it phrased that way. So you're essentially just popping up your business in certain different locations. It could be within your city. You could travel for these different events, but you essentially just pay to be a vendor, and you pay for your booth. You're able to show up during the time of the event, and then you have access to all of the customers that are walking around this event. Most of the time, there's a lot of other small businesses that are there as well. A lot of times, because being in the candle field and the candle industry, that niche, there are usually at least one or two other candle vendors that are at that same event as well. But in my personal experience, I haven't noticed too many crazy differences in terms of income of what I receive in those events. But that's just something to keep in mind if that's something you're wanting to do. So I wrote down a list of pretty much things that I love and things that I don't love when it comes to being a vendor. So I am going to start off on the positive side and talk about all of the things that I like, all of the pros when it comes to being a vendor. And hands down, the most worth it, positive, plus side to being a local vendor is being able to physically meet your customers and get the word out there with your brand physically. So because most of us that are getting started in a candle business, most of the time, I mean, some people do, but most of the time you don't jump right into a brick and mortar store. So you don't have your name plastered on a building all the time that people are driving by or they're able to see. So being able to go to these local markets and have your name up there and on your booth, it really just kind of gives you this this sense that you're really putting yourself out there, that people are seeing your brand, even if they're just walking by. One of the things that I notice all the time, and I'm sure if you've been a vendor before, you've probably had people do this as well, but they'll be walking by and they'll look, and they'll be like, Memory Box Candle Co. And even if they don't walk in, them saying it in their head, I don't know, it just does something. Like maybe they'll think about that later on, maybe it'll come up randomly in their brain, they'll look me up. You have no clue what's going to happen. So the more times that you're able to be at a place where you can have your brand name out there, it just really helps you so much with growth. Also, at the very least, a lot of times, sometimes there'll be a lot of looky-loos that come in that just are interested in kind of checking out what you have, maybe smelling a couple candles. And I've been trying to get much better at this. Chris has always been much better about this than I have. I think it's also because he's kind of able to project his voice a little bit louder than I can. So sometimes, even when I welcome people in, I'll say hi or hello, and a lot of times they don't even hear me. But when Chris says it, he just, I don't know, he can kind of project his voice a little bit better than I can. But a lot of times if people are interested in your items and what you have, but they're just kind of looking around, maybe they just got to the market. That's another thing. If people just got to the market, a lot of times people kind of want to do like a once over. And I think it's because they're probably looking to see if there's anything they like more, which I totally understand if they have a certain amount of money. But before they leave, we'll try to be like, oh, go ahead and take a business card. So for instance, at the last market we were at this past Friday, we had the first hour, no sales, but we had given out so many business cards. So it just is kind of very back and forth. And of course, I'll get into the cons a little bit later on. But a pro is definitely just you can market yourself. I mean, you can hand out things, you can hand out brochures with pricing. Honestly, that might actually be a really good idea to do as well, is not only business cards, but print out a little brochure that has more information about your brand that you can hand out with business cards. And that way people are able to actually look a little bit further into your brand, because I don't know about you, but if I get a business card, sometimes it's kind of a hit or miss on whether or not I'm actually going to look up that company. I think it just depends on the situation. But I think if you had a little kind of informational pamphlet kind of thing that people are able to take, that might be a really good idea for vendor events, because it really puts into perspective. People can see pricing, cents, and it really just kind of gives way more information than just a business card. The next pro with being a vendor is you can make some good money in a short period of time in just one day, or even if you're doing kind of like a 3-day weekend or something like that, where you're able to, show up at the same booth and stuff like that, you're able to make a good amount of money, obviously depending on the kind of traffic, the kind of year. If there's any, holidays, obviously that's a bonus. But for the most part, Chris and I have made between $500 and $1,000 per market. For most of the markets that we've attended, there have been some markets that have been in the $300 or $400 range, but I believe we've done close to, I think, like 17 or 18 markets or something. And I've definitely noticed different times of the year will bring, different kinds of traffic. We just did a St. Patrick's Day market, and it was much busier than the previous market on the previous month in February. So I didn't even think about it when I was signing up that was a holiday. But even little holidays like that, you're able to kind of gauge that maybe there'll be a little bit more traffic, because any kind of holiday event, people want to be able to get out and do something, especially if there's something going on in their local town. So it's a really, really great way to get started with your business and get started with making money that doesn't have to deal with, having a website, hosting platform, any of that kind of stuff. You're able to just get the supplies that you need for your vendor booth. Yes, you do have to pay for a vendor booth, but it's just for that one day and that one event. And then anything that you make beyond that is all profit. So there's definitely a really, really good chance for opportunity when it comes to vendor events. And trust me, in my local area, I know that it doesn't get really busy at a lot of the events that we've done. I know I mentioned in the past before that Chris and I typically do about 4 to 5 hour long events. Sometimes I think we've done 6-hour events before, but they are pretty small. There's nothing like a huge event or anything, but I've heard that some people can make thousands of dollars in a single day. But for me, making 500, I'm like, I'll take it. That's nice. So you definitely can make a good amount of money in a short period of time when it comes to vendor events, and you're able to meet your customers in person, talk about your branding in person, really connect with customers, build a relationship with your local customers, especially if you're able to get into the same market. If there's agencies or companies within your town that will put on the same market at the same time every month. For instance, we have a lot of companies that will have, let's say, the third Friday of every month or the first Friday of every month, and it's always the same location and always basically the same event. And a lot of these customers will get out during that time. And we've had a lot of people that will ask us, do you do this every month, or do you do this every week, or are you always here? And sometimes, we're able to tell them what our next market is going to be. But for the most part, people are always going to be more interested in a brand that they're familiar with and that they can come back to purchase more products if they love the products. All right, so we talked about some good things, and overall, I think it is a great experience for any business owner to do. It's something that has taught me a lot about being a business owner and just kind of expanding and getting more comfortable with talking about the brand and meeting people, and it's just a whole different environment. But personally, there are some things that I do not like about doing vendor events. The first thing being is that they are a lot of work. Now, yes, I have Chris, and I am extremely grateful for that. He primarily makes all of the candles now, and he's very good at getting everything packaged up. He packs up everything. He pretty much sets up everything. He pretty much tears down everything. So I really have no complaining to do. But when you're looking at the grand scheme of doing markets, and even when I talk to my other candle making friends as well who do markets, we all agree it's just a lot. It really is a lot. And with the whole gamble, basically, of how much, basically not knowing how much money you're going to be making for what you're putting into it, the energy you're putting into it, all of the time you're putting into it, and the booth fee, all that kind of stuff that you're putting into it. And you can't have a guarantee of how much you're going to be making. But that kind of is the same thing with running a business in general. That's the same thing with having a website platform, of paying a monthly subscription and paying, maybe for different apps for your website, or email marketing, or other things that you're paying for. And in business, you just can never know exactly how much money you're going to be making per month. So it definitely is a gamble, but I don't know. I go back and forth, and again, I know this is going to sound funny, but I'm just definitely being honest. I go back and forth all the time, like, is this worth it? Is it worth it, all of this, to, spend all of that time? And not to mention all the time that you're spending there, basically waiting for people to come and purchase products from you. So it definitely is a lot of work. So just know that going into it. But again, I still think it's such a good way to get started with your business. So that was definitely one of the things I had on my list. I also you have to pay for your booth in most cases. I know there are cases where, let's say there's a new event going on, and these event managers are just wanting to find vendors to be able to have an event. So I've heard of cases before where people get that booth for free, in order to just be a part of the event. And I think, slowly over time, once it becomes more popular, then they charge for it. But that is definitely something that I think can be an option in certain situations. But for the most part, you will be paying a booth fee. And this can vary greatly depending on the event that you are going to be attending, how many people, how popular it is, what city you live in, if you're in a big city or a small city or whatever it is. So that is going to vary very, very greatly. For me personally, and all of our events, we typically pay anywhere from $100 to $150 per event for our booth space. Something else that's not necessarily something that I hate about vendor events or anything, it's just something that you kind of learn the more events that you do, and that's, you have no idea what is going to sell, how much of things are going to sell. So for instance, in one event, you could have maybe your top 3 scents that were huge sellers at that event. So you think to yourself, okay, those did really, really good, so we'll make sure to bring more of that next time. You go to another event and none of them sell. And you're just like, okay, well, how am I supposed to know? So that's the thing, is we always bring the same amount of every scent, and we have to bring a bunch. Even if we're bringing, let's say 100 something candles, and we only sell 10 of them, but we had to lug and bring all of these candles. So that's something that you have to think about as well, is that most of the time it's not going to be okay, well, these sold really well last time, so they're going to sell really well again. It's not like that at all. You have literally zero clue what is going to sell, what sizes, what quantities, what type of products are going to be the best sellers for that specific day. It is always, always, always different. And then the last con that I wanted to bring up, and this may be just I no longer am working a regular day job kind of mindset. I haven't worked my day job in, oh my gosh, it's been actually pretty much exactly 3 years. I gotta look up, I think it was March 16th or something like that of 2020 when we got laid off during the whole 2-week thing. And thinking back at that job, and one of the things that I think always bugs me about doing markets is the fact that you have to be there from a certain time. You can't pack up and leave early. You have to stay there. And it reminds me of being at a job where I'm, at the front desk, I'm clocked in, I can't clock out until a certain time. And it just is that kind of I'm stuck, I'm trapped, I can't leave. And I don't have the control to leave. So I don't know if some of you can relate to that. And again, I think that might just be some sort of work from home privilege mindset that I have, probably more than likely. But that was definitely something that I started noticing after a while at being at markets. And I'm like, man, we have like 2.5 hours left. It's been so slow. I just wish we could just leave. But honestly, I'm kind of glad that we can't leave, because most of the time, within the time that I'm like, oh man, I want to leave, we're ending up getting a lot more sales within that time. So you would have missed out on sales if you would have left early, or if you would have been allowed to leave early. So that definitely kind of, puts it into perspective in the moment, even though I'm like, oh, I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore. It puts it into perspective that if we were to have left early, then we would have missed out on those sales. So overall, I don't want this video to discourage you from wanting to try out vendor events, but I'm just being honest in my experience of things that I really love and things that I don't love so much about being a vendor. And the more that we do them, and the more that I know kind of what I'm wanting and where I'm wanting to take this business, and really focusing more on the wholesale and retail side of things, I just think that in the long run, for me personally, in terms of time and all that kind of stuff, I would probably feel like doing less vendor events and getting more wholesale clients would be more beneficial for me and my business. But I know that there's some people who vendor events are their entire business. I mean, there are so many vendors that we've seen where, I mean, they're doing, 4, 5, 6 vendor events a week. I couldn't imagine doing that. Oh my gosh, that'd be exhausting. That'd be so exhausting. And it's not only exhausting with the amount of time that you're taking to, put everything together, make all the products, take it over there, set everything up, but it's also the talking to people. I mean, especially being introverted, Chris and I are very introverted, so being out there, it's a lot of energy being used up, so that can feel extra draining. So I don't know if that's also coming into play with all of this. But overall, I don't ever regret when we're at a vendor event. I don't regret passing out business cards. I definitely don't regret meeting the people and selling them candles, obviously. And we've built a pretty good amount of people that have heard about us and found out about us in our surrounding cities. So it's definitely overwhelmingly way more of a positive than a negative. So we will definitely continue to do them. And again, I know I'm so lucky that I have Chris with all of his help, so I shouldn't even be complaining, but I was thinking about this video as we were doing the market this past Friday. So I really hope that this video was interesting, gave you some insight, especially for those of you that are interested in getting started with vendor events, or if you're nervous about doing it. I totally get it. I was so nervous for my first event. Oh my gosh, was I so nervous. But I promise you, it's not as scary as you think it is. It's just a matter of kind of finding your rhythm and getting back to talking to people, especially if you're not used to that customer service interaction. So you can do it. It is a lot of fun. I've always had a lot of fun with vendor events. There's only been maybe like 1 or 2 events where it was like, man, this is rough, like in the summer when it's really hot and you have your candles melting, or you have kids kicking up dirt all over around you, or just things aren't necessarily going the best way. Those can be a little, it's a hit or miss. It happens. But for the most part, the majority of all of the markets we've done have been really enjoyable, a lot of fun, and Chris and I get to, have that experience together. So I'm going to stop talking a lot. But again, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to leave it a big thumbs up, as well as subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Memory Box Candle Co. And I will see you in my next video.